Hello, YouTube viewers, and welcome to my channel, Jackson's Journal. And my guest today is a gentleman by the name of Gary Leber, who is the founder and executive director of Women's Life Services. And before I get into the interview with Mr. Leber, first, I'd like to encourage you guys to subscribe to my channel, watch some of my other videos, comment, and hit those like buttons. Also, I have another YouTube channel called CCM Drummer. So please check out that channel as well. Mr. Leber, welcome to Jackson's Journal.
Thank you, Matthew.
And tell me a little bit about Women's Life Services. You said it's a pregnancy resource center? Or...
Yes, correct. We're a pregnancy resource center. We're here in Vestal, New York. Our unique position is that we're across the parking lot from an abortion center here that's sadly been here for about 30 years. And so, yeah, we intervene with a lot of moms with unintended pregnancies who are in that situation, who really don't get all the facts. A lot of times their boyfriends or their mother or their father or, you know, their uncle or whoever is all saying, the coworkers are all saying, you know, you're just not ready to have this baby right now. That's the big one. You're not ready to have this baby. Wait till you get an apartment, wait till you get more money, wait till you get married. You know, there's always something. And so these young ladies don't feel like they have any support. Well, actually don't have any support. So when they come here, you know, we do everything we can we do what's called life coaching. And what we simply do is we don't tell them what they should do or what they shouldn't do. We just provide our ladies, Elizabeth, Joan, Monica, provide a listening ear to them. And then slowly ask a couple questions that will continue to allow them to actually have a voice.
Give them
and be able
options.
To say, you know what, when it really comes down to it, I really do want to have this baby. It's just that everybody's telling me that I shouldn't. So,
you know,
so we intervene. Yeah.
Isn't it funny how the pro-aborts claim to be pro-choice, but yet when a woman chooses not to have an abortion, they're not quite as pro-choice.
No. Right. They're actually, what is at the root of it is actually the devil repackages the same thing over and over. And he's just been able to do it in the 21st century, the 20th century, the 21st century America. He's been able to repackage the same thing and call it choice, call it, women's rights and all this kind of stuff. But when it really boils down to it, it's the same thing. It's basically child sacrifice. And so, you know, a lot of the abortion centers, I don't know if all of them, but a lot of them are definitely connected with, you know, the dark side. And so they're really not pro-choice, they're actually pro-death. And God forbid that we get one of their clients that supposedly accidentally comes in here, and we don't see anything as an accident. We see it as God's providence. So God forbid that, you know, we save a baby and that they actually are saying, you know what, you know, that's not a bad thing because, you know, we're pro-choice. They're not. They're not. And that's what we got to pull the covers off, is they're not pro-choice. We're not pro-choice either, in the sense of, you know, we're not sending them there. What'll happen a lot of times, they'll say, well, you know, if I'm in the wrong place, please tell me where it is. And we say, well, you know, you just signed a form that says that we do not refer or perform abortion. So if we send you there, if we tell you where it is, then actually we are liable for anything that might happen to you medically or, So
pro-choice in the strictest, purest definition is you provide all the information. And then from a position of objectivity, the person makes the choice, being fully informed on the options. But obviously the pro-aborts, they want to skew the information given to the pre-abortive mother. And the pre-abortive mother, if you're making choices on limited information, well, then that's not pro-choice.
Right. Correct. Yeah. So we tell them all about the abortion procedures, We don't even force, pictures on them of abortion victims, but we do introduce that and say, hey, if you want to see what will happen with your baby, do you want to take a look at this? And they say,
ultrasound?
they might say yes. We actually got two programs that we're currently working on very diligently. And we have an in-house ultrasound program and a mobile medical unit, which we've just purchased.
Okay.
So we're trying to orchestrate both of those at the same time. Not the easiest thing, just snap your finger and get a doctor in New York that's going to want to stick his neck out. So we have one. But again, it's a process of letting God open the doors and us being right there when the doors open and step through that door. So
let me ask you this. Was your last Friday is as good as my Friday?
Yeah, it was really very emotional. It's one of those things like when you have a relative die or whatever, but it's like only the reverse of that.
Well,
it hits you one time during the process that you're just gonna break down, and that's what happened to me. And I had to have
me too.
A friend just kind of put his hand on me and go, "It's okay, you're going to be all right,"
Yeah.
But it was the tears of joy, tears of, the same idea that it depends on who you talk to, but it could be like, okay, let's rejoice, let's thank God. He deserves the glory, but guess what? There's a lot of work to do.
Yes.
And as a close friend of mine would say, he would say, we've just taken Normandy Beach. It's on to Berlin. That's kind of where we're at right now.
That's a good analogy. And obviously, now talking about pro-choice, I think the Supreme Court decision is very pro-choice in the sense that it lets the states choose how they want to regulate abortion.
Right.
Or whether or not they want to protect children or not.
Yeah, it was actually kind of amazing because if you look at what they're basically saying is this is unconstitutional. So they're not sitting there going, we're pro-life, we're pro-choice. And, it's not really that. The media wants you to think that these conservative justices were somehow, all these active pro-life activists or something. And they're really not. They're just looking at the Constitution and going, wait a minute, if we want to be true to what our office is as Supreme Court justices, and we want to look at the original intent of the Constitution, then this definitely needs to be put back to the states. And it just, again, it's not a, we went through this whole thing with COVID where they call it a mandate, but the media is more than happy to say, well, it's not a mandate, it's a law. It's actually a law. So the fallacy, as friends of mine would say, Roe v. Wade was not the law of the land, it was actually the lie of the land. Right. So it really wasn't anything that went through any legislative process. It was just 9 men who said, 7 of them said, seems like a woman has a right to privacy, blah, 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 blah. And they just came up with this stuff that really wasn't constitutional. So 49 years later, it's amazing that it took that long. But again, it was because of justices who were appointed that were what we call originalist, which means that they would look at the original intent of the Constitution and go, you know what, worst case scenario, this needs to go back to the states. But we're hoping and praying that when it goes back to the states, most of the states are going to go, wait a minute, we can look at the Constitution too. We can look at our state constitution, and we can realize that this for hundreds of years, whatever long time it's been, since 1828, I think I heard that 1828, like abortion was legal for, I don't know how long, somewhere in there. But, again, it's like not something that, is really in our Constitution at all. And so many of these states have had laws on the books for all this time, all these 49 years, they've had laws on the books that they passed through their legislatures, governors had signed them, and they're basically saying, this abortion homicide law has been here. Why those states kind of rolled over and played dead at Roe v. Wade is kind of questionable because Abraham Lincoln said, when Dred Scott came through that said that Black people were 2/3 of a person, Abraham Lincoln said, you can ignore that because that's, that's just the Supreme Court making a determination. So
now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you and interview you is that you and I had crossed paths back in May of 1988 when you were a leader in Operation Rescue, and I was a participant along with the Houston contingent from Houston, where we drove up to participate. And I remember on, let me think, May 5th, Thursday, when we did the Long Island rescue.
Right, I remember.
363 of us were arrested that day. And the rescue team was so big that they put half the rescue team at the front of the mill, the other half at the back of the mill. And so you were like the appointed leader. I guess Randy Terry or Mike McMonnell, somebody appointed you to go back and lead the rescuers in the back of the mill. And that's how I remember you.
Yeah, which was not, it wasn't hard to do.
Right.
When people have a heart to put their bodies, I mean, simply sit down. That's all they were doing. Like, what's the training for this? Well, the training is that there's a mom coming in or multiple moms coming in to abort their babies. And we're in the same idea of Martin Luther King, who stood up for the rights of Black people by going into the lunch counters and saying, we deserve to be served here. In almost that same spirit, it was this thing of, these babies deserve to live. So what we're going to do is we're going to nonviolently sit down in front of this door, and we're going to have sidewalk counselors on the outside, on the perimeter, and they're going to talk to the moms who would otherwise be able to come in and kill their babies. And in about a year or so of doing that across the country, there was recorded, I think 8 or 9 months, really, there was like 1,100 babies saved by simply sitting down in front of the door of the abortion center and saying, Mom, we're here. We're not threatening you. We're not doing anything against you physically or personally or anything like that. But we care about your baby more than you do at this point. And many of those moms went, you know what, you're right. And so those babies were saved.
The Operation Rescue New York, that entire week, I wrote about it in my book called Lock.
Oh, yeah. It's funny that you picked the title Lock and Block, though, because it wasn't really that. The rescue was more of a block.
The rescue in New York was not lock and block, because we didn't need lock and blocks in New York, because there were hundreds of us.
Right. You didn't need to do anything too creative like that, because when you get less people, you got to be a little more creative, I guess.
Well, a handful of rescues, like 4 or 5 or 6.
Right.
Smaller rescue team. If a small rescue team has a lock and block, they can be almost effective as a rescue mission with over 100 rescuers.
Right. It buys time for the babies. I mean, the goal is to buy time for the babies.
That's it.
So you can let the mom think about this, to stop and think about it.
That's all it.
And so anybody that's ever criticized rescue, which is simply nonviolent interposition, just in the same way you would say if you see somebody going down the street and they're headed towards a child and they wanted to grab the child or do harm to the child or something like that, you would interpose, you would put your body between that that persecutor, whatever that person is that's chasing the child. You put your body in between that person and the child and try to stop that. And that's basically it. I mean, it's not like, this isn't rocket science, and it's not violent. It's been called violent, but it's putting yourself between the baby, the mother, and the abortionist knife or suction machine or whatever there might be. And so anybody that criticizes it, I found, it's strange, because some people that are actually pro-life, which, I guess they are pro-life. I mean, I get it, but they actually criticize rescue. And what I'll say is, well, do you want me to show up at your house with 30 or 40 or 50 35-year-olds, who probably have their own children now. Some of them maybe they're starting to get grandchildren. You want me to show up at your house with them, who were saved by interposition in a peaceful, nonviolent way at the abortion center, and show up, and you could tell them that they don't deserve to be alive now because they were saved by rescue, which some people would say is illegal.
Yeah, there were a lot of
yeah,
pundits.
it's nuts. Yeah.
In 1993, when the rescue movement fizzled out, and then of course in the May of 1994, the federal law Faces, where it made it a federal crime to block an abortion mill. A lot of the pundits says, well, the rescue movement was a failure, but actually, I would say quite the opposite. You and me are one of the reasons there is a federal law called Faces. And when we were doing rescues at the abortion mill, obviously the short game was to save the baby, close the mill for that day, and try to save the babies who were going to be scheduled killed that day. But the long game was, we were thinking we were gunning for Roe v. Wade. We were actually fighting Roe v. Wade at that time, because we did, by doing the rescue and being at the mill, whether you're rescuing or not, you're saying Roe v. Wade's not a legitimate law.
Right. Yeah.
So I think guys like me and you, the rescue movement, I think we deserve some of the credit for Friday's victory, in the sense that we were able to keep the issue on the front burner in the late 80s, early 90s. And you remember we had the Webster decision come down in 1989. Even though it did not overturn Roe v. Wade, it did give the states some latitude to regulate abortion, which that was a little opening for us.
Right. Yeah.
And now we see the fruit of it last Friday.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is that when you have people who have, kind of made these kind of sacrifices and, gone to jail and been able to say, this was a move of God. I mean, I think that's the key, is that we wouldn't have really been able to do it without God's leading and God's direction, because we always got to remember that God wants this abortion like completely abolished.
Yeah.
And that can be seen in the Lord's Prayer, when Jesus said, pray this way, our Father art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Basically, that's saying, there's no abortion centers in heaven. there's no child sacrifice in heaven. So they're basically saying, what Jesus is saying is, this is the way I want you to pray, that the kingdom of God would come to the earth, and that would work through people, his church, and that people would see that and join, respond to his message of love and sacrifice and forgiveness of sin, and would be able to come to him. And that's really it. So really a lot of that fruit has been where there have been women who have also come to Christ through this process and realized that, what they were doing was wrong, and they thought it was the right thing at the time, but they began to realize that it was wrong. And so many people that have done abortions, that were abortionists for so long, have come to Christ and have been able to see the light and really be a good spokesman for the babies and the moms.
Have you maintained contact with Randall Terry over the years, by any chance?
Not for a while, but a few years ago, one of our coworkers had passed away. One of our early Operation Rescue ladies had passed away, and he called and said he wanted to give condolences to her husband. And then he said, hey, I've got something I'm thinking about. And before he asked me, I knew what it was. And so we are looking for people that would actually be willing to come on camera. Maybe it'd be something as simple as this. I don't know, whatever it would be, but we believe the story needs to be told, because there's a lot of people that don't know that there were over 70,000 people arrested. Now, maybe that wasn't 70,000 people, maybe it was 70,000 arrests, but there was still the largest civil disobedience, from some people's perspective, the largest civil disobedience movement in the history of the country, way more arrests than the civil rights movement. And that story needs to be told. So there is thought and looking into an Operation Rescue documentary. But again, things that you've documented, things that hundreds of other have documented about this movement, I think need to be told. And now there's a prime time with Roe v. Wade falling to step into this and say, here we are, Normandy Beach is taken. There's been a lot of sacrifices. There have been a lot of people taking a lot of hits. This has been good, bad, and ugly for some people. Yeah. But here we go. We got to move.
If we can,
we got to move in, and we got to take Berlin. Yeah.
If we can do this documentary in video format, that would be great.
Now, that's it. That's the plan.
In my book,
yeah.
Not only do I tell the rescues, I've been arrested 8 times and participated in other rescues where I weren't a rescues, and I tell all my rescue stories in this book. But
great.
At the same time, I tell I cover the entire rescue movement, because now Joe Schuyler, Racketeer for Life, was good, but he covered his experience.
Yeah.
Miller's book Abandoned was good, but she talked about her experience, where I talk about my experience and I give you a overall perspective on the rescue movement as a whole.
Right.
Rescues that I didn't participate in, and I got it from different books, publications, and magazines, and it's a composite, because before then we had this book called Wrath of Angels that covered the
well, I was interviewed for that, so was a lot of people, but they had an agenda. They had an agenda.
I don't want the pro-aborts having the last word on it.
No, that's the point. That's the point of the OR documentary, is like, let's tell it from the story of the people that were there. I mean, you're gonna have, you have the whole 9 yards. You got infighting, you got people that won't talk to each other, but then you got a lot of people that just go, let's blow that off, and let's just wait a minute here. This story needs to be told. I don't care if you have this little personal problem or that little personal problem, or you were hurt by this or you're offended by that. I mean, the bottom line is, this is a movement, and it's almost like if you look at World War II and you stop and you think, and your brain is still, exploding over how in the world did, Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill bring in Joseph Stalin, who killed 26 million of his own people, him and Lenin, and they were like, we need this guy in order to take Hitler down, because if we don't have this guy, we're not going to take Hitler down. So it's like the movement, the rescue movement, is nothing like that. I mean, you're talking about brothers and sisters in Christ. You're talking about people that have problems and struggles and sins and struggling along and trying to make good decisions, and they're making some bad decisions. I mean, you got that, but let's tell the stinking story.
Yeah, in my book, I talk about the infighting, or not infighting.
Well, but it's drama. They call it drama. Sometimes.
The drama between the evangelicals and the Roman Catholics.
Even that.
Difference of opinion.
Right. Yeah.
And at that time, Randall was very evangelical.
Right.
Fiction, but we were, for whatever reason, the miracle of it all is we were able to put aside our differences, and when we were at the mills.
Right. Yeah.
We were all just pro-life Christians, and that's it.
Well, yeah. And I'm seeing that here, even in women's life services, we have a mixture of Catholics and Protestants and, whatever, different combinations. But I think the thing is, Randy used to say, hey, he goes, look, we can have our theological differences. We can have our religious differences. He said, but if a house is on fire, and if it's your house on fire and you got your children in there, you're not going to go outside and go, excuse me, Mr. Fireman, are you Mormon? Excuse me,
Right.
Mr. Fireman, are you Catholic? If you are, I don't want you, squirting any water on my house. It's like ridiculous. So I think that's where, we've learned over time, and it's been said, and of course we have this whole downline of Operation Rescue kind of split into two branches, and I think sometimes those two branches they don't like each other or whatever, but it's split. And so you got the Operation Save America people, and then you got the Operation Rescue people with Troy Newman. And Troy, I love what he says. He says, every time a baby is saved, Roe v. Wade is overturned. So we've been overturning Roe v. Wade all along. It's official now. Okay.
Right.
And I would think that thousands and thousands of babies are being saved as we speak, because you had that mom who her boyfriend told her you need to have an abortion. Her coworkers told her, her friends told her you're not ready for the, it's almost always the same thing. Oh, you're not ready, to do this, and so those moms, a lot of them deep down, they're like, this is my baby. I was, God, whether they know God or not, they're like, I feel like I want to take care of this baby. This is my baby, and so they're able to tell their friends, coworkers, boyfriends, you know what? I live in Wisconsin. I'm not going to go to Illinois. I want this baby. And so a lot of the family relatives are going to go, you know what? It is illegal now, so we're not going to push her anymore. I think there already is a lot of that going on. Now, there are always probably others who are like, no, I'm determined. I'm going to drive to Illinois from Wisconsin. And I'm going to go to Planned Parenthood. I'm going to get referred down there. But yeah, it's amazing that like in one day, boom, a lot of these abortion mills are not doing abortions. They're referring, but they can't do them.
Well, thank you for being on my show. Our time has run out.
Okay.
If you do come in contact with any executive producers who want to do a documentary, please tell them about my book, Lock and Block. They really need to look at it, because it'll be a good reference. It'll be a good guide. For them. It'll be almost like a treatment where, it's a free screenplay. So, and maybe I'll try to contact Randall myself and get an interview with him like I am with you, and
there you
tell
go
him about my book. I'll even send him a free copy if I can.
Yeah, well, what I would say, Matthew, is you're definitely a candidate to be interviewed for the documentary. We're just hoping and praying that we're able to get this going. I mean, he got a quote already from a producer. I mean, you're talking a professional video, and he's looking at doing it in the format of Eyes on the Prize, which is a 6-hour documentary about the civil rights movement.
Okay.
And he's, the guy's quoting him $1.2 million. So, get your wallet out and get your microphone out, because you'd be certainly a candidate to be interviewed.
Okay.
So so it's happening. It has to happen. I don't see how we can let everybody else tell the story.
Right. We don't have a comprehensive documentary on our history in electronic video format, and we need that. Well, listen, thank you for your time. I really appreciate talking with you. Maybe we can do this again someday.
Okay.
And for those of you watching, thank you for watching. Please feel free to make comments in the comment section below. If you disagree with us, all I ask of you is you just be polite and cordial. You don't need to get ugly. So, but other than that, thank you. God bless and have a good day.
Okay.